do you think we have provided enough financial support to Ukraine? And should Australia do more to offer financial aid to Ukraine?
Oh, well, to my knowledge, Australian support to Ukraine has pretty much fallen in line with otherwise Western. It always feels weird to say Western in Australia, but kind of politically Western support to Ukraine in a sense that it's been inconsistent and late, often very late, reminding that the war in Ukraine started in 2014. And speaking of that Hamas didn't attack out of the blue sky, Russia also didn't attack in 2022 out of the blue sky. If there was all this help and all this effort before 2022, maybe it would never happen. Speaking of Australian support, ironically, just today it's been in the news that Australia basically denied Ukraine a shipment of coal that the Ukrainian government asked for because our electric and heating infrastructure is severely damaged and we need it for the winter. And as far as I understood, the reason cited for that, for the denial, was that that would go against Australians' aspiration to reduce fossil fuel use. And, you know, as somebody who has lived under Russian occupation, I really appreciate Western-style liberal democracies. But also living in one of them now, I see how much of not just politics in Western liberal democracies, but also public discourse around this politics, how much it's full of feel-good politics and not do-good politics. And so I find it very ironic when two feel-good kind of approaches of, oh, we feel good about environment, not using fossil fuels, and we want to also feel good about saving little Ukrainian children, you know, from freezing in their beds. And then these two things collide, and then we don't know what to do. So, yeah, I'd like to say to Australian audience, if you want, you know, to have your cake and to eat it too, and to get both, then no. And if you want to really help, real help often comes with some sacrifices. It's not just about, you know, feeling good. So the question is what you are ready to sacrifice. Is it about aspirations for fossil fuel? Is it about relationship with China, perhaps, you know, and trade relationship with China? What else it can be? But it's hard to not do anything significant, but also feel good.
Paul, is this something you're passionate about?
I think Australia should do more because, you know, as a matter of principle, we should protect our allies. And obviously, we can't let Russian rock state keep invading. And if Russians success, then what happens to Taiwan? So really, as a matter of principle, we've got to do our utmost.
So you see it as a principal kind of test case almost, so that there aren't other states like China incentivised?
Yeah, in the same way, if North Korea, you know, attacking South Korea, the American, our ally, have the responsibility to do their utmost. You know, this is a big test.
And you don't feel like we're doing enough?
I think we can do a bit more. I mean, Penny Wong didn't respond, so we should do our utmost.
No, yeah, I agree with you, especially at the point that Australian, perhaps especially, but generally Western support to Ukraine often lacks kind of grander strategy of what we are doing and why we are doing it, and why it matters. Because a lot of, like it's very ambiguous. We're getting a lot of mixed messages. Like, oh, on the one hand, guys, you are fighting for all of us. You know, it's not just Ukraine's personal problem. You know,
you're fighting for the Western world.
For the Western world. On the other hand, it often feels like you know, like we are getting help out of charity, you know, or just like out of some good-heartedness, and then. Like this coal story is just one in a series. Yeah. Like a couple months ago, there was a case when Ukraine targeted several oil storage facilities in Russia, on the territory of Russia, and the first reaction of the United States was like, "Oh, just pull back. We don't want that before the election, the oil prices, you know." Yeah. And it always reminds me of this like really big inequality in the sense that for Ukrainians it's existential.
Yeah. Julian, the West has lost some of its enthusiasm for supporting Ukraine.
Yeah, or whether it had it in the first place. I mean, it always seemed to me...
Well, it talked big at the start, right?
Yeah, I mean, looking at it from Washington, where I'm based and where I live, there was a sense of OK, well, now that they held off the Russians at the gates of Kyiv, we're going to support them in defending what they have. But there was this fear that there would be, you know, catastrophic success on the part of the Ukrainians, and they'd go into Crimea, and the Russians would get really angry, and there would be this war, there was this threat of a wider war. And so, for a long time, the US, who are, let's face it, are the biggest suppliers, was supplying just enough for Ukraine to survive, but not to win. And the consequences of that is a limbo in which many tens of thousands of people have died.
I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, this is... we had an interview with Zelensky in the paper the other day in which he said everybody worries about escalation. Everybody talks to me about escalation and we should avoid escalation. He says, but the escalating number of dead Ukrainians doesn't seem to matter in that calculation. And I wondered, Alisa, really, I mean, it's quite clear, and it must be clear to you also, sir, that the United States and Australia and all these countries are not willing to go to war for Ukraine, which is the ultimate commitment. Let's face it. If you are serious about saving Ukrainians, you should be willing to go to war to save them. They're not willing to do that. That's quite clear, right? It's also, it seems to me, and maybe you will disagree, it also seems to me that it's impossible for Ukraine to defeat Russia militarily on its own.
I guess so.
So we are really stuck. This is limbo in a true sense, right? We are between saving Ukraine and it being able to save itself. And I wonder then, what do you do? What is there a political horizon? What is the strategy?
Well, I don't know what is the strategy, but I think we keep returning. Actually, we spoke about it, Julian mentioned it in relation to Trump. We just keep returning, I think, to the problem that whatever united or not very united West is, the global strategy is kind of very short-sighted or absent. And so with Ukraine it's very clear, so, OK, let's do something to pull through this month. And then we don't know
But what is the
happens.
outcome that you as a Ukrainian could accept?
Well, that's a very good question because... my position here aligns with the position of Ukrainian government, and it's a very rare case, actually, because I disagree with the Ukrainian government on many issues. But the Ukrainian government says that we want our whole territory in the borders of 1991 back. And I agree about that because I am from that territory that was taken in 2014. And so, you know, in the US, they often propose Ukraine, like, oh, just give away some land for peace. Or why don't we make it like Korea? Look, South Korea lives great. And my reaction to that is, no. Excuse me, what about North Korea?
Yes, indeed.
What about those guys like me who are from North Korea? It just like suggest to dump us, you know, somewhere there for the sake of pushing it under the rug. And,
but what if, and also, I mean, the idea that Putin would take a certain amount of Ukraine and say, fine,
right, that's enough for me now.
That's a delusion.
Sort of, it wouldn't be consistent with his character. Our final